Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem, welcome back to today's Daf, which is SUKKAH Chaf Hey. We begin at the Mishnah, which is around 10 lines from the top of the Amud. Says the Mishnah, Shluchei mitzvah, p'turim min sukkah. Those who are involved in a mitzvah, even en route to doing a mitzvah. They're pata from sukkah. We learn in the Gemara that one who is involved in a mitzvah, oisek b'mitzvah, is exempt from doing any other mitzvah. So speaking, even though they're not actually doing a mitzvah currently, they're simply on their way. They're en route, Rashi says. They're going to learn Torah by a Rebbe. They're going to greet their Rebbe. They're going to be Paidei Shavuyim. That in itself is a reason to exempt them from doing other mitzvahs, including Sukkah. And Tosfos points out that we're speaking where their involvement in the mitzvah precludes their looking for a Sukkah, meaning should they have to go look for a Sukkah, it would interfere with their ability to be Mekayim mitzvah properly. It would take up from their time at night. They wouldn't get enough sleep, enough rest, which would allow them to properly fulfill their mitzvah. So according to Tosfos, we're speaking where one mitzvah will interfere with the other, and since they're already involved in these mitzvahs, they are already shluchei mitzvah, they are asik mitzvah, and they are pata from doing another mitzvah. Continues the Mishnah, Choylin u'mishamsheyan, ill individuals and their attendants, peturin min sukkah, they're exempt from sukkah, just as the choyla can be out of the sukkah because it's a tsar for him to be in the sukkah. Likewise, his attendants are pata from sukkah as well. Concludes the Mishnah, Oichlin v'sheisin aray chutz l'sukkah. If one decides to have a temporary, a snack, achila v'shtia of a temporary nature, just as throughout the year, right? Teishvu kein taduru. Sukkah is meant to be like, reminiscent to the way a person lives in his home throughout the year, and just as throughout the year, a person wouldn't hesitate to grab a snack outside his house. Likewise, when it comes to sukkahs, we say oichlin v'sheisin aray chutz l'sukkah, and that's okay. And of course, the Gemara tomorrow will tell us that that's been hadin. We find stories where Chachamim were machmer, even to have everything, even a snack, davka in the sukkah. It says the Gemara, Menachne Mili, how do we know that one who is involved in a mitzvah, one who is oisek b'mitzvah, he is now exempt from doing other mitzvahs to Tana Rabbana? B'shiv t'cha b'veisecha. Pasuk tells us we're meant to be korei es shema when we sit in our homes. We learn from here, prat oisek b'mitzvah, as opposed to one who is involved in a mitzvah. He's exempt from Kriyas Shema. From the words of Lech Techa V'Derech we learn prat l'chasan, as opposed to a chasan who's preparing for the great event and is preoccupied. That is considered oisek b'mitzvah, and he's potter from reading Kriyas Shema. Let's go over to Rashi. Around halfway down the Amud, at the word masnisen. It's right before the wide lines. Masnisen shluchei mitzvah, says Rashi, not only those who are involved in a mitzvah, they are shluchei, they are holchei b'derech mitzvah, they are en route, on the way to doing a mitzvah. Kigoyin l'lmod Torah, some have a girsa l'lamed Torah, a Rebbe who's going to teach Torah, u'lahakbil pnei rabbi, or to greet their Rebbe on Yom Tov, v'livdei shvuyim, to redeem captives. P'turim min sukkah v'afilu b'shas chanayasin. Oh, here's the chiddush. Even though they're resting, it's nighttime, they're not traveling any longer, they're still pater. Rashi and Chavav says, because they're still torrid and they're doyeg, machshavas ha-mitzvah, they're still preoccupied with the mitzvah, it's considered that they're still involved in the mitzvah. And of course, as Tosfos explains, we're speaking that the requirement to go find a sukkah would interfere with their ability to fulfill the mitzvah properly the next day. Continues Rashi Gemara, B'shiv t'cha b'veisecha, prat l'isku mitzvah. What does B'shiv t'cha b'veisecha teach you? Only this fellow is chayiv as opposed to one who is involved in a mitzvah. She'ein chayiv b'kriyas Shema. This fellow doesn't have to read Shema. We'll come on mefarish my mashma. The Gemara soon will explain where do we see this in the pasuk? Where's the pasuk indicating that one who is oisek b'mitzvah is pater? From the words of Lech Techa V'Derech we learn prat l'chasan. Va'afagav duhunami b'mitzvah tarid. Oh, asks Rashi, why the repetition? You've already exempted an oisek b'mitzvah. Why do you have to be mamayit a chasan specifically? What's the added chiddush? As Rashi, there is a chiddush. It's strichelu trei kroi. We need two exemptions, two psukim. Why? The have a ksiv chad. Had the pasuk only provided one exemption, I would say, well, kivan the chasan lav behed yuksiv bekra, since the pasuk isn't specifically mentioning the word chasan, havamina loy pater akasav. I would think the pasuk is not exempting unless you're actually doing the mitzvah, not merely preparing for a future mitzvah. Loy pater akasav ela terech v'isa maleches mitzvah biyadayim. He's doing it physically, manually. Oy malach mitzvah, or he's on the way, he's walking, he's en route. Either way, he's actually involved. He's doing. As opposed to a chassan just sitting idle. He's not actively doing anything yet. He's only preparing. He's only preoccupied with the upcoming mitzvah. I would think that's not reason enough to exempt him. That's why we need an extra pasuk to address the chassan as well. And what are the grounds for that petur? The tarid b'machshavas beila. That in itself is enough reason to be paiter him. So according to Rashi, b'shivtecha b'veisecha is addressing one who is involved, who's doing a mitzvah or en route to a mitzvah. It's a maisa that he's doing, whereas uvlechtecha v'derech seems to be addressing the chassan, where it's just a mental preoccupation. That in itself is enough reason to be paiter him. Taisus disagrees. He puts it the other way around. B'shivtecha v'veisecha is addressing a chassan who's just sitting idle. Right? B'shivtecha v'veisecha. So only if you're sitting and doing nothing on your own account, but if you're sitting and doing nothing and preparing for a mitzvah, right? So you're not actively doing a mitzvah, you're just sitting idle, but mentally preparing for the mitzvah. It's a different type of yeshiva. It's not b'shivtecha b'veisecha. It's not your personal yeshiva. It's a heavenly yeshiva. It's a heavenly preoccupation. Although a mental preoccupation, you're pater there. So b'shivtecha b'veisecha, according to Taisus, is coming to b'mayit chasan, whereas of lechtecha v'derech, which is describing an active event. If it's your personal business, then you're chayiv. But if you're doing something of lechtecha v'derech for the sake of a mitzvah, then you're pater min mitzvah. So according to Taisus, it's just slightly different than Rashi. B'shivtecha b'veisecha, which is describing a passive fellow, that's going to exempt the chassan who's involved in a mitzvah, albeit passively, but he's preoccupied with a mitzvah, as opposed to lechtecha v'derech, which describes an action. So if it's your personal affairs, you're chayiv, but if it's a mitzvah affair, then you're pater. Okay. Says the Gemara. So we have a pasuk to exempt a oisek b'mitzvah. Mikan Amru, says the Gemara. We learn from here. Hakoines es absula pater. One who is marrying a psula. So he's preoccupied with a mitzvah, he's pater from Kriyas Shema until he does the Masa, as the Gemara in Brachas explains. Ve'esal monachayiv, as opposed to a previously married woman, there's no p'tur of oisek b'mitzvah. The Gemara soon will give the reason for this distinction. Okay, so that's the end of the brayz. Asks the Gemara, my mashma, where did you see in these words, b'shivtecha b'veisecha, u'v'lechtecha v'derech, that it's going to be memayit, one who is oisek b'mitzvah? Where do you see it in the words? Amar Rav Huna kederech. We focus on the word u'v'lechtecha v'derech, and the pasuk describing the chiyuv of Kriyas Shema, which contains the word derech, is alluding to the fact that only one who is involved in an activity which is similar in nature to derech, whatever that means, he is chayiv in Kriyas Shema, as opposed to one who is not. What does this mean? Amar Huna kederech. We compare it to the derech. V'lechtecha v'derech. Ma derech reshus, just as derech is describing one who is involved in his own personal affairs. Rashi says, Hoylech b'derech schir, is traveling on business. Af kol reshus, likewise. The only time one is going to be chayiv in Kriyas Shema is if his activity is of a personal nature. La fuki hai, as opposed to these fellows, the b'mitzvah osuk, he's involved in mitzvah. So that's Gemara, how do you know that's pshat derech? Milei askinan de ka'ozal dvar mitzvah. Perhaps the word b'derech is all inclusive. Personal affairs, traveling to do a mitzvah. Vika Amar Rachmana Likri. The Torah still requires him to be Kari Kriyishma. How do you know if a derech is of a personal nature? Im Kain, if that would be so, Leimakra b'Sheves Uvelechas. If b'derech would be including mitzvah as well, then the pasuk would have said b'Sheves v'Secha Uvelechas v'derech. B'Sheves Uvelechas, which is a generic term. My b'shiv techa uvelech techa. Why does the pasuk add a chaf? You're sitting, your travel. We learn from here. Belechas tidachu de machayves. You're only chayiv in Kriyishma if you're involved in your own personal affairs. If you're traveling to address your own personal needs, traveling on business. Now, although business is a mitzvah to support oneself and his family, but it's not. It can be considered a masa mitzvah. This specific act can't be described as a masa mitzvah, although it's fulfilling his obligations, but it's still called a dvar reshus to a certain extent. So belechas tidachu de machayves. Yeah, when you're involved in your own personal affairs, you're chayiv in mitzvah. Ha belechas de mitzvah petiras. Apparently, if you're involved in a mitzvah travel, you're shliach mitzvah, and you're pater. That explains the brayse. B'shiv techa b'veisecha uvelech techa v'derech. Only a person who's involved in his own personal affairs is going to be chayiv in Kriyishma. However, if you were already oisik b'mitzvah, that mitzvah preempts any other mitzvah that might come along, even though, and this is a chiddush, even though Kriyishma is a time-related mitzvah, it's going to expire soon, but no, you're involved in a mitzvah, you're not meant to do anything else. Says the Gemara. Ihachi. Now the Mepharshim explain, the Gemara's kasha like this. We say oisik mitzvah pater mera mitzvah, and that's why a chassan who's mentally preoccupied with his upcoming mitzvah is pater. So why the difference between a psula and almana? Ihachi afilu koinis is almana nami. Answers the Gemara. Koinis is a psula tarid. Only by a psula is he experiencing a great mental preoccupation. There's a whole halacha with tanas besulam. There's a point of the complications that might arise. So he has to focus, he has to stay mindful. He's preoccupied with the mitzvah. So koinis is a psula tarid. Koinis almana le tarid, as opposed to almana, where you don't need that much expertise and there's no tirda. So Gemara at this point figures that what's the determinant factor here? What's going to be poiterim mina mitzvah? The fact that he's preoccupied, the tirda justifies poiter mina mitzvah. Oh, if that's the case, so any tirda should be poiter mina mitzvah. V'chalecha the tird hachanami the pot. Do you mean to say any tirda exempts a person from a mitzvah? If that's the case, tavas finasa bayam. The tird. Suppose a person had a merchandise-laden ship which sunk at sea. He's certainly in distress and preoccupied. Hachinami the potter? Are you going to say he's potter min mitzvah? Can you say that? V'amarav abba bar zavda amarav. Avel, even a mourner who's experiencing great distress. Chayiv b'chal mitzvah yisamuris b'torah. He's obligated to do all the mitzvahs. He has to overcome his distress, overcome his emotional barriers. He has to overcome. He's chayiv. Except for chutz min tefillin, that's an exception. Why? Sharei nemar ben pe'er. The pasuk describes him as pe'er, an adornment. And Rashi says it's not appropriate for the avel to adorn himself, in which case it would appear like he's disregarding the mace, disrespecting the mace, doesn't miss him, and that's a lack of kavod towards the mace. And that hurts the mace. The mace wants to be remembered, he's still emotionally connected somewhat to this world. The point of avelus is to show kavod mace. So tefillin should not be worn by the avel, but everything else he's meant to do, despite the fact that he's fully preoccupied with the avelus. Answers the Gemara, there's a difference. Hacha tirda the mitzvah. A chassan's mental preoccupation is in itself a mitzvah. Rashi says, be mindful, focus and concentrate at the task coming up. It's part of the mitzvah. So when we say tirda, is a poiter. It's not tirda on its own. It's tirda combined with the fact that it's a tirda of a mitzvah. Hasam tirda d'rishos, as opposed to an aval, although it's part of the human condition to be mired in mourning, avelus, and tirda. Understand where he's coming from, but the fact of the matter is, there's no chiyuv to be in distress, no chiyuv to be turret. Rashi says, sure, the aval has to be noiheg avelus. He refrains from rinsing, from wearing shoes, to show kavod mesa. But as far as his emotional condition, that's arbitrary. It's natural. It's just the way things work. But this fellow has the ability to overcome. He can put mind over heart. He can overcome his emotions, break through it, and focus on a mitzvah at hand. So tirda on its own is not enough justification to be poitim in a mitzvah. So the Gemara went back and forth. The Gemara figured chassan is potter because of mitzvah. If that's the fact, then why the difference between psula and almana? The Gemara answered because psula involves a greater tirda. Tirda alone is a poiter. Why is it aval chayiv? Answer is tirda in conjunction with mitzvah. Let's go down to Rashi, 10 lines from the bottom. Actually, 13 lines, 12 lines from the bottom. Torrid. Says Rashi, Torrid, liboy torrid machshavas be'ila. Right, the chassan is Torrid, mistaver ki patri kamishim tirda patri. It's mistaver that the p'tur of Eitzuk mitzvah is because of the tirda of any yachal lasek b'shnayim ke'echa, because he can't, one person can't be involved in two things at once. If so, says the Gemara, so why is an almana different? Koines almana loy Torrid. It doesn't involve the same amount of tirda, v'yachal l'kayim b'shneim, which allows them to be mekayim both. Right? Clarify your mind, focus at the mitzvah, the krishma, and then go back to your mitzvah preparation. Says the Gemara, if it's tirda alone, that's going to be reason to exempt him. Imisham tirda, says Rashi, Haida Parachti. Gemara asks kasha, understood mashmalei the tirdase partarse. That tirda on its own is a reason to be poiter him. Because he cannot properly focus. We're speaking about krishma. You can't focus when you're preoccupied. If that's the case, even in the case where a person just experienced financial distress, financial loss, he should be pater from krishma. The Gemara says, well, it can't be so because an aval is chayv and mitzvah is despite the fact that he's vitzar, except for tefillin. Should never be pe'er. Because the kamon, as the Gemara will explain, va'aval lav bar pe'erhu. It's not suitable for an aval to be involved in adornment. Why? Ukishim is inspired because when he experiences pe'er, mar ba'atzma sheni aval, he presents himself as a non-aval, which is a display of disregard to the departed. Says the Gemara, you're right. Tirda on its own is not reason to be poiter him. Chasan tirda the mitzvah. Vashmin and kra delay mechayev lahaser daitim machsheves mitzvah rishayna. And the chiddush hakra is that although it's not a physical preoccupation, it's just a mental preoccupation, you don't need to divert your mind from their tirda on account of the mitzvah just arrived. Bishvil zu abba alav ella, rather yasek b'rishayna. Quite the contrary. Keep on thinking, keep on focusing. V'yiten liboy li is baki b'davar, to gain knowledge and expertise, and to be properly and mentally prepared for the task, as opposed to an aval who's involved merely tirda de rishos. Sha'aval bishu chayv linig avela shel ne'ila ruchitza v'sicha. Although we know an aval has certain restrictions, he won't wear shoes, he won't wash himself, won't anoint himself. However, says Rashi a chiddush, this is a famous Rashi. What's the point of avelis? Not just to be sad and depressed. It's laharois kavod mesa. To display, it's a show. It's a display of respect to the mace. It's a show of kavod. And the Farshim say the mace is v'nafsho el of tabal, is some sort of connection. He's still emotionally connected somewhat. It's hard to understand what this means, but the mace is somewhat connected to his prior experience down on earth and to the people and his family. So the fact that throughout the Avelis period, the mourner commiserates, so to speak. He restricts himself and he shows that he misses the departed. That is a kavod that consoles the mace as well. But that's it. When it comes to what's going on in his heart, there's no chiv to experience tsar, although it's part of the human condition to have tsar and avelis. But when it comes time for a mitzvah, it's his prerogative. It's rishus. He has the ability to overcome, and he should do so. Okay, so we had a makar for Isaac b'mitzvah, pater min mitzvah from the pasuk of Krishma. You have to be called Krishma when? V'shivtecha b'veisecha uv'lechtecha v'derech. Gemara says we're speaking that it's his personal affairs. B'shevas didach uv'leches didach. But he's involved in mitzvah affairs, whether a maaseh mitzvah, whether walking to a mitzvah, en route, shluach mitzvah, as in the Mishnah, or even tirda the mitzvah, like the chassan, anticipating the marriage with the psula, that is reason enough to exempt him from mitzvah. Says the Gemara 4 lines from the bottom. This tour of Isaac mitzvah is learned from the pasuk of Kriyashma. We have another source for the same halacha. This is the pasuk by Pesach, where they came to Moshe. We're tamei, we can't bring the Pesach. The Sanya Vayi Anoshim Asher Hayu Tmeim Lenefesh Adam. Who are those people that were tamei and unable to bring the carbon Pesach? We have a 3-way machlekes. Oisem Anoshim Mi Hayu. Who are they? Noisei Aroine Shal Yosef Hayu. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. He maintains these individuals were the ones who transported the Aron containing Yosef Atzadik. So they were tamei on account of that. They were Mishael ve'el Tzafin, the brothers of Nadav v'Avihu. She'oiskin ben Nadav v'Avihu. They got tamei through their involvement, through their kvura of their brothers, Nadav v'Avihu, who died on the last day of the Miluim, which was Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Rabbi Yitzchak Omer, it can't be. Why? The timing doesn't work. If that were their case, they were involved in the urn of Yosef, what's the problem? They've been camping at this location for many months. And they had ample time to become tahor, l'kavod the carbon Pesach. Rashi brings that the Parah Aduma was prepared on the 2nd day of Nisan. There's enough time to become tahor in anticipation of the carbon Pesach. If that were the case, here again, because keep in mind, when did that tragedy occur? When did Nadav Avihu die? It was on the last day of Miluim, which was Rosh Chodesh Nisan. And the very next day, they prepared the Parah Aduma. There's enough time to become tahor. Ella rather, says Rabbi Yitzchak, it must have been something else. They were neither the Oiskei Arein Shal Yosef nor Shal Vel Tzafan. Rather, it was an unrelated thing. Their relatives had died 7 days before Pesach. They were involved in their kvura. Shechal Shvi Shalahen, the of Pesach. They were Oiskei Meis Mitzvah, whose 7th day of Tumah landed on Erev Pesach, which prevented any involvement in current Pesach. They were unable to bring the current Pesach on that day. What does Bayemahu mean? Bayemahu ein yichayin lasais. They couldn't bring the current Pesach on that day. Halamachar yichayin lasais. But if it would have been tomorrow, past their 7 days of Tumah, they could have brought the current Pesach. So we're speaking that they became tamei exactly 7 days before Pesach, which prevented them from bringing the carbon Pesach on Erev Pesach. So what do we see from here? They didn't hesitate to get involved in kvura of a relative 7 days before Pesach, knowing full and well, as a result of this involvement, they're going to be unable to bring the carbon Pesach. So as Rashi will explain for us, we see that even a mitzvah kala, you see, bearing a mace, in this case, Taisa says we're not speaking about a mace which didn't have anybody to bury them. Not a real mace mitzvah, it just means a relative. It's a mitzvah to get involved in burying a relative, but it's a mitzvah kala, relative to mitzvah's Pesach, which can involve kares. This is only mitzvah kala. And notwithstanding the fact that it's going to interfere with Pesach, they went ahead and they got involved in this Tumas Meis. So we see that Oisik Mitzvah Patur Min Mitzvah. Let's go to Rashi, halfway down the Amud. Tmei Meis Mitzvah, says Rashi, although usually Meis Mitzvah means that he's an unattended Meis, we're not speaking about that type of Meis Mitzvah. Lav Meis Mitzvah Dafka Kamer. I feel may say Nami Meis Mitzvah Korilu. We're speaking about a relative who passed away. The mitzvah is Asak Bahen. We have those 7 relatives who the Kohen may become tummy to. And likewise, Yisrael is involved in that, is doing a mitzvah. He's carrying out his responsibilities to his close relatives. It's called a Meis Mitzvah. Taisus points out that it can't be a true Meis Mitzvah, meaning an unattended Meis, who has nobody to bury him, because in that case, Taisus brings, we actually learn from another pasuk, La'achoisai, the Moran Zvachim learns the word La'achoisai, that when it's a real Meis Mitzvah, then you could even tend to that Meis on Erev Pesach after Chatzos. It's a different issue. He was speaking about a close relative, so it's somewhat of a mitzvah, and the Gemara says that it was Shechal Shvi Shalahen. The 7th day of Tumah arrives on Erev Pesach. Va'avkav the Chazal asks Rashi Akasha, what's the problem? It's their last day, they're going to be Torah tonight. Why can't they bring a Korban Pesach today? Loi ishtaru, they can't bring it. The kasavar ein sheichte v'zorkin al tmei sheretz. We learned this in Psachim, that if one is unable, he's currently unable, then he can't have the Korban Pesach brought on his behalf as well. In any case, we learn from here that the Oisek b'mitzvah patur min mitzvah. One who's currently involved in a mitzvah, he is exempt from any other mitzvah. How do we see that? These fellows became tummy with Mesim 7 days before Pesach. Knowing full and well, with a full awareness, that this tumah is going to be ma'akev, bringing a Korban Pesach. Alma, we learn from here, mitzvah kala habol yadcha. You have a mitzvah, even a mitzvah kala. Not as important as Korban Pesach, but if it arrives first, there's no need to set it aside, to ignore it, in anticipation of a more important mitzvah coming up. So this is another makar that oisik b'mitzvah patur min mitzvah. So we have a kasha. Why do we need 2 makaris for the same thing? One from Krishma, v'shivtecha v'yisecha, and another one from the halacha of Korban Pesach. Says the Gemara, 9-10 lines from the top, tzricha, both makaris are needed. The Yashmin and Hassam, if only from that pasuk by Korban Pesach, I would say, mishum delay mataz man chiyuv the Pesach. Look, think about it. When they got tummy, was there a chiyuv of Pesach? No. It hadn't yet arrived. So perhaps they're patur, because currently there's no chiyuv of Pesach. So they go ahead and they do what's here, even though it's at the expense of a future mitzvah. But when it comes to Krishma, this Chassan, for instance, sure, he's preoccupied, but he can set aside that preoccupation. He can switch tracks and go to the mitzvah's Krishma, which just arrived. You see, the Tameh can't bring Korban Pesach any longer. It's practically unfeasible. But here, he can technically set aside the mitzvah that he's involved in and do the next mitzvah, especially since it's a mitzvah iveris, it's a passing mitzvah. It's going to expire soon. Emalai, perhaps, there's no p'tur of Isaac mitzvah. Tzricha, that's why we need a pasuk to tell you, no, there's a p'tur of Isaac mitzvah, even in this case, when he's faced with mitzvah's Krishma. V'yashmin and hacha. Now, had the pasuk only taught us by Krishma, I would say, Krishma like a chorus. Krishma is not as significant. It's not as chashav as the Korban Pesach, which generates chorus. If one ignores Korban Pesach, Aval Hasam Dika chorus, and when it comes to a mitzvah's chorus, perhaps you don't apply the concept of Isaac with mitzvah patur and mitzvah tzricha. Both psukim are needed. Now, there are a couple of points that need to be clarified when it comes to Isaac with mitzvah. We mentioned before the Tosfos. Tosfos says that Isaac with mitzvah patur and mitzvah is only in a case where he's bound to the first mitzvah, meaning practically he can't do both at once. Taisus brings a riot. Look, otherwise, in every Yisrael we put from all mitzvahs. He's wearing tzitzis. He's wearing tefillin. Some add, well, you have a mezuzah on your doorpost, so you're doing a mitzvah at all times. So everybody's patur min mitzvah. Says Taisus, apparently that's not the case. The only time patur min mitzvah applies is if he's not yochel l'kaim shneim. You can't do both at once. Practically, his hands are full. He can't do the other one while he's doing this one, and that's why he's patur. So likewise, in the case of the shluchim mitzvah, now Mishnah Taisus learns we're speaking ki'agavna that they, if they would be turd in going to look for a sukkah, it's going to be mevatel them from their mitzvah. That's Taisus shita. The Ran disagrees. He says, well, the kasha from wearing tzitzis and tefillin and mezuzah is a big difference. There he's just being mekayim a mitzvah. He's doing a mitzvah, but in what manner? It's fulfillment. He's not physically doing a masa mitzvah. It's a different type of thing. I agree, says the Ran, in that case. That's not going to be poiter min a mitzvah, but when he's actually doing a masa mitzvah, even if he's yochel l'kaim shneim, he's poiter min a mitzvah. That's also the shittas Erzerua, that the p'tur of oisik b'mitzvah patur mitzvah applies even when he can do both. He's not mechuyev to do both. You're doing one, stick with it. That's the chiyuv of the Torah. Do one thing at a time. Now the Ran does add that if it doesn't involve much tircha and exertion, he says go ahead and do the second one as well. Why not? He applies the pasuk mi yois toiv al tikri ra. If you can do both, why not? That's only if it involves no tircha. But if it involves extra exertion, to try to juggle both at once, then certainly there's no need to do the second one. So that's the machlokes between the Ran and Taisus. Now the interesting kasha that the Ritva asks, why do you need a pasuk? One pasuk, another pasuk, that oisik b'mitzvah patur min mitzvah. Says the Ritva, why would I think that a person has to stop a mitzvah which he is already doing in order to do another mitzvah? Why do you need a pasuk for that? So Ritva answers two terutzim. Number one, you're right. You don't need a pasuk to exempt him from the other mitzvah. The pasuk is coming to tell you that you can't. You're not allowed to do the other mitzvah because he says it's like rishus. When the Torah tells you that oisik b'mitzvah need not do another mitzvah, in effect the Torah is telling you there's no longer a chiv to do the next mitzvah. It's just like a rishus. It's like a personal matter, in which case you cannot, even if you choose to do so, you cannot drop this mitzvah and do the other one. You're not allowed to drop a chiv to do a rishus. So that's what we learn from the pasuk. Not that you don't need to do the other mitzvah, that's pashut, but they're not allowed to do the other mitzvah. Secondly, says the Ritva, what about a case where he's fully aware of the fact that he has a mitzvah coming up soon? He knows that there's going to be a chiyuv kriyas shema. Can I involve myself in a mitzvah now, knowing full and well that it's going to preempt the fulfillment of the upcoming mitzvah? And perhaps I'm speaking about a mitzvah which is a veris, it's a time-related mitzvah which is going to expire. Yes. And that's the chiddush HaPasuk. So again, if he's involved in a mitzvah, of course there's no chiddush that he doesn't have to drop it. But the chiddush is that I can go ahead and involve myself in a mitzvah knowing full and well that it's going to interfere with another mitzvah, which is a time-related mitzvah coming up soon. And that's what we learn from the pasuk, oisik mitzvah is patur min mitzvah, even in that case. Continues the Gemara. Gufa, let's review. Amar of Abba Bar Zavta, Amar of Vel Chayev B'chol Mitzvahs Hamuris B'Torah. A mourner is obligated in all mitzvahs except chutz mitfilin, sharei nemar ben pe'er, because pe'er, an adornment, is used to describe tefillin, and that sets it aside from other mitzvahs. Although he's patur from tefillin, that's because of the pe'er factor. However, generally speaking, it's chayiv in mitzvahs. Now, how do we know that to be true? That he's patur from tefillin. Hashem tells Cheskel this was in anticipation of the tzoros that Yisrael are going to experience during the Churban. He says, look, your wife is going to die in the Magefa, and you're not going to be experiencing Avelus. That's going to be a siman to Yisrael, sort of a foretelling to Yisrael that they're also not going to have Avelus. Everybody's going to be mace, and nobody's going to be around to be Avel. Pe'erecha chavash alecha. You're going to behave differently than a standard Avel. Your pe'er, your tefillin will be wrapped around you. We learn from here, atu de machayvis. You are going to wear tefillin to show lack of Avelus. Aval kuli alma p'tiri, but otherwise an Avel is not meant to wear tefillin. So you're meant to exhibit a conduct which contravenes Avelus, a non-Avelus conduct, and therefore wear tefillin. Otherwise, an Avel is not meant to wear tefillin. As Rashi explained in Amud Aleph, why is tefillin different than other mitzvahs? Because of the pe'er aspect, the adornment. It shows that he's preoccupied with adorning himself, and sort of ignoring the mace. Says the Gemara, this only applies on the first day of Avelus. It's the main day of mourning, the main day of bitterness. But otherwise, even the Avel wears tefillin. V'amar Rav Abba, there's going to be another halacha in the name of Rabbi Abba bar Zav Damarav. Avel chayiv b'sukkah. Just as an Avel is chayiv in all other mitzvahs, it includes sukkah as well. Pshita, of course, why would I think otherwise? Since we find another quote in the name of the same Anda Amar, that mitztar patam na sukkah, a person who is in distress. It's cold out here, it's too hot. He's patam from sukkah. We're going to learn this tomorrow, Be'ez Hashem, because Teishvu Kein Tadura tells you that the sukkah residence is meant to resemble the home dwelling. And just as when a person is in tsar, he leaves his home, likewise he's patam from sukkah. So I would say, even an Avel is pater. Hai nami mitztayru. He's in distress. The Rosh says he'd like quiet, he'd like solitude, darkness, to feed his mood. So the sukkah is distressing him. Perhaps he's pater from sukkah. Kamash Malan. The Chiddush is no, he's chayiv in sukkah. Why? Even though it's resulting in tsar, hanamila tsar de memela. The p'tur of mitztayr is only when it's circumstantial tsar. Rashi says, for example, sun, heat, some uncomfortable smell, or the Gemara later will speak about bugs and flies which disturb him. So anything sukkah related is called mitztayr, which is poitem na sukkah. Aval hacha, but in case of an aval, what's the source of the tsar? He's distressing himself. So again, although it's part and parcel of the human condition to be in distress and in anguish upon the passing of a loved one, but lemaisa, he can overcome it. It's not sukkah related. It's not outdoors related. He has the ability to settle his mind and prepare himself mentally for the sukkah experience. So there's no p'tur of mitztayr by an aval. V'amar Abba bar Zav Damarav, another quote in the same Anda Amar, Chasen v'sheshvinin v'chol bnei achupah p'tur min sukkah. Not only is the chasen pater from sukkah, even his sheshvinin, his entourage, all his helpers, all the ones that are partying with him during the Shiva Yimei HaMishta, v'chol bnei achupah, all those guests involved in the Sheva Brachas p'tur min sukkah. Kol Shiva, throughout the 7 days of Sheva Brachas. Now Taisa explains that the way they used to do it is as follows. They used to have a place called a chuppah. So it's not the chuppah that we're speaking about during the wedding. We're speaking about some canopied area which was set up to serve as a place of celebration throughout the Shivas Yemei Mishta. So the Chas and Kal will sit there, entertain guests, and be happy and joyful to celebrate the Shivas Yemei Mishta. So speaking, of course, where the wedding took place before Yom Tov. I meant to get married on Yom Tov. Ein ma'arvin simcha b'simcha. So the wedding took place before Yom Tov. And the Gemara tells us that all those that are involved in the celebration of the Yemei HaMishta are pater from sukkah. Why, says the Gemara? What's the connection? My time, mishum de bo l'michti, because they need to be happy. They need to celebrate. Okay, so what's the problem? Let them eat in the sukkah and be happy in the sukkah. No, it doesn't work. Ein simcha el b'chuppah. Wrong location. Simcha only happens at the chuppah, which is set up for this purpose. Okay, says the Gemara. So go eat in the sukkah and be happy in the chuppah. V'leich leb'sukkah. Let them have their meal in the sukkah. Be mekayim the mitzvah there. And then transfer v'leich to b'chuppah and go to the chuppah to celebrate. No. Ein simcha el makom suda. You forgot. Simcha needs to be all-encompassing. Body and soul. Ruchni and Gashmi, all-encompassing experience. So true simcha is only with a suda. Okay, says the Gemara. So, v'leiv du chuppah b'sukkah. Put the chuppah in the sukkah. So you'll have everything. You'll have location, you'll have suda, you'll have sukkah. Right? So what's wrong? Abaye amar mishum yichud. There's a problem with that. They couldn't combine both things. They couldn't put the chuppah in the sukkah because of yichud. Rashi says, perhaps the chassan will go down to use the restroom and the people sitting there will be misyachid with the kala. And it's inappropriate. Therefore, they couldn't have the chuppah in the sukkah, which was a public venue. On the one hand, it was up on the roof, and actually, Rashi says it's not a public; it's a private area. It's up on the roof. That was a derech to have the sukkah up on the gag, and perhaps the chassan will leave for a moment and leave his kala behind. It's inappropriate. It creates a yichud difficulty. It doesn't sound like it's asar min halacha. We know that when the husband is around in town, Ba'alo Be'ir, the Gemara in Kedushin speaks about Ba'alo Be'ir. If one's husband is around, even if he's not here at the moment, that preempts any yichud concerns. But it seems from the Gemara that it's still not appropriate to set up their Shabbat Bracha celebration in this manner, which will create this uncomfortable halachic situation. That's a bias pshat. So the chuppah had to be in the chuppah, and the sukkah had to be in the sukkah. You couldn't combine the two. V'rava amar mishum tsar chasam. The reason why the chuppah cannot be placed in the sukkah is on account of the tsar of the chassan. Rashi says because it's a narrow area and it's open, exposed. He's boish l'sachik and kalasa. It's uncomfortable for him to spend time with his kala there. So on account of both these reasons, the chuppah had to be arranged in a different locale, which was more private and didn't have any yichud concerns. So, as a result of that, they couldn't do sukkah and chuppah at the same time. Therefore, they're pater from sukkah. My binayu, is there any difference between both pshatim? Whether it's a yichud concern or it's a chasam concern, it could be no differences. The shchichi inshi the nafki v'ayil hasam. Let's say you have a sukkah up on the roof, but it's a public venue. People are coming in and out. Shchichi inshi the ayil v'nafki l'hasam. People are coming in and out. Abaye's concern of yichud doesn't apply. Traffic preempts that concern. But Rabbi's concern on account of tzar chasen applies here as well. It's not a private area, it's not enclosed, and therefore he has tzar, and that would be reason enough to exempt him from sukkah. So that's the bottom line. An aval is chayv in all mitzvahs, including sukkah. Chayv in everything except for tefillin, which is pe'er, which interferes with avelis. On the other hand, we have a chasen, other side of the spectrum, a chasen, and his entire chevra, all pata from sukkah, as the Gemara explains, because in order to properly be mesameach during the Shivis Mishnah, you have to have location, has to be in the chuppah, and also suda taking place. So because of that, they have to specifically be in the chuppah and eat there. Whereas the sukkah itself will not do service to the simcha, it's going to create concerns of yichud or tzar chasen. I'm Rab Zeira. Ano achli besukkah v'chadi b'chuppah. I didn't do that. I ate in the sukkah and I rejoiced in the chuppah. And some learn v'chadina besukkah, meaning he did merge the two things. He had his chuppah in the sukkah. He didn't want to be potter. The Kolshken, he says, and all the more, certainly, the Chadi Liboy created an even greater simcha in my heart. The Ka'avid Notarti, I fulfilled both mitzvahs. Simchas Nesuin and mitzvahs Sukkah. Okay, let's just review the main points of today's daf. We had a Mishnah, which contained 3 halachos. Shluchei mitzvah, who are oisek b'mitzvah, are pater min ha-sukkah. Choylin and their mishamshein, aptur min ha-sukkah, and Achilo shti arai is mutter outside the sukkah. We had 2 psukim which taught us the halacha of oisik b'mitzvah patur mitzvah. We had b'shivta chavaveisecha v'lachta chavaderech, which Rashi and Tosfos explain are referring to a person who's involved in a ma'aseh mitzvah or halicha mitzvah, as well as a fellow who's preoccupied, a tirda of a machshavas mitzvah. And the chiddush here is, even though he's now faced with a new mitzvah, mitzvah's krishma, he can ignore it and continue and resume the mitzvah which he's already involved with. Okay, the second makar from Karban Pesach, which tells us that you're allowed to be involved in Tumas Kroivim, even though it's at the expense of the Karban Pesach, which is coming up soon. And the chiddush is, even though Karban Pesach is a chorus-generating mitzvah, the Torah applies in that case as well. We concluded that an aval is chayiv in all mitzvahs, even mitzvah sukkah is mechayiv liyashiv daitoi, to avail himself to that mitzvah. He's chayiv in everything except for tefillin. We learned that from Yecheskel, that generally speaking, tefillin, which are described as a pe'er, is soiser, contradicts the kavod hameis, and should not be worn only on that first day, which is the ikar merirus, ikar averos. We concluded that a chassan and his entire entourage are pater from sukkah, whether it's because of the sar chassan, because of the yichud. Rabbi Zera concludes, I fulfilled both, and I certainly experienced a greater measure of joy. Kol tov to you and atzlacha rabbah.